If you are a buyer looking for a new construction home, you might figure you should just go to the building sites and talk with the friendly agent who's there, who knows everything about all of the models and how many there are going to be built and the different upgrades and all of that stuff, because that person is extremely knowledgeable. That is an understandable perspective. However, it's not a good plan. When you are looking at new construction, please tell your buyer agent and make sure to go to see anything, at least the first time, with your buyer agent. Here are just a few reasons why. The most important thing to understand is that the agent who is there on site works for the seller. That person represents the seller's interest and has a fiduciary responsibility to that seller. So that means that you're going to get a skewed representation, if you will. You really won't be represented at all. So, for example, that person is always going to tell you how fabulous the builder's reputation is and how they're one of the best in the business and how their base models include so many nice things that people don't really need to upgrade much, all of this stuff. So remember, that's coming from somebody who works for the seller. So keep that in mind. Another reason you want to make sure that you have your agent with you is that there are a lot of potential hidden costs when you buy new construction. So there are always the upgrades. On average, most new construction home buyers spend about 20% of the purchase price, again, on upgrades. That's a lot. So a lot of people don't know that going in. There's also lot premiums. The different lots that you can purchase have different amounts attached to them because some are more or less desirable than others. So not only is there a cost thing to understand about lots, but your agent can also help you understand that they are less straightforward than they seem to be. Part of the reason you have a lot premium that's higher on one than another might have to do with if it's on a slope and you can have a walkout basement. Well, there are walkout basements where you just go out the sliding door. There are walk-up basements where you're a little bit below ground, but they can build you in a set of maybe 6 stairs to get you to ground level. And then there are lots which do not have grounds that make sense and you can't get out from your basement. So that's something that comes into play when you're looking at lots, and it's not always explained very clearly. But the other thing is, well, where is the lot? Is it right next to the storm management system where these big concrete things are to move the water around? A lot of times the listing agent won't mention that, but your buyer agent should. The other thing to keep in mind about the lot is that when you see it undeveloped, as far as the undulations of it, where if there's any flat part or sloped part, it's going to likely look very different once it is actually built. So the listing agent does have the plans with all of the topography showing how that lot will be developed. Not that many people understand how to visualize those or read them, but just make sure you talk to your agent, your buyer's agent, about that, because sometimes you might think there's going to be a flat lot because it hasn't been developed yet, and then you commit to it and you go see it as construction's going along and it's on a hill or it has a slope. So understand that the lots before they're developed often look different than once the house is completed. Your buyer's agent, in conjunction with the listing agent there, should talk to you about upgrades. So obviously, the first level of upgrades are, what do you want? Which things are important to you? And obviously, you don't need anybody else to help you figure out what appeals to you. However, your buyer agent is much more likely to be honest with you about return on investment of certain upgrades in the event that you sell the house down the road than the listing agent will. They just want to sell you as many upgrades as they can because that money goes right into their pockets. But there are certain things that just don't make sense from a return on investment perspective. And there are also certain things, often like getting a deck built or a basement finished, that can be much more economical after closing to be done by an outside contractor. Again, those are not the kinds of things that the listing agent's going to tell you. Another cost issue that I started to talk about at the beginning of the video that can come into play are HOA fees. Sometimes the fee that they quote you goes way up once half the number of houses are sold out, or once it's after the first year. So your buyer agent should be able to get a better sense of what that fee is likely to become, even if it seems low right now. Another thing is that when you purchase new construction, very, very often you can go for a tax abatement. I'm not going to get into all of the reasons why in this video. It will get too long, but the point is that's something that your buyer's agent should counsel you about and advise you about, so that you're not paying more than you need to be paying in taxes once you do actually purchase the home. One of my pet peeves about going to visit new construction is that the model home you walk through has so many upgrades that it usually is about 50% more as far as cost than whatever the base model of that house is. So when you're walking through something, in most cases, particularly with certain builders, you're really not getting something that's representative of what you would get if you just got the base model. So make sure that your buyer's agent asks how much the upgrades are on a model that you're walking through, so you have an understanding and what's standard and what is not. One of the things that always shocks me is how few recessed lights are standard. You get a few in the kitchen and maybe one more, or a light upstairs in the hallway, and then all the other lighting is extra. So when you walk through the model, make sure that you and your agent discuss with the listing agent which things are upgrades. They won't bring all of that up themselves, though. Your buyer's agent should ask what the building warranty covers. And another thing that I like to offer my buyers that a listing agent of new construction never will is to do a pre-drywall inspection. So when they're building, there are certain inspectors who do what are called pre-drywall inspections. So they're really looking at the wiring, the plumbing, to make sure there's no shortcuts taken there. Because remember, once the walls are up and the drywall's in, you can't see any of those things. So I like to make sure to keep them honest and on their toes and make sure things are done properly. And again, find out what the builder's warranty actually covers, because it's not always what you might think. Finally, to be fair, there's not as much negotiating possible on new construction as in a regular resale home purchase. So people often figure that's the reason they don't need a buyer's agent. Well, you're not going to be able to negotiate on price. To a degree, that is true. Most builders will not negotiate on price. Every once in a while, a good buyer's agent, if the builder is in a situation where it makes sense, might be able to get something thrown in for you. They don't usually change the price, but they will sometimes throw in an extra or an upgrade if you push hard enough, if the circumstances are right. But in this particular case, new construction buying, that's not really the major benefit that you're going to get from using a buyer agent, but there are tons of other benefits, as I hope this video has demonstrated.